Thanks everybody for bearing with me. We are getting to the end of Adopt AI, and I appreciate your attention while I set up my computer. I am Tom Halloran, co-founder and CTO of Capital. And Capital is an agentic framework for building high-value artifacts with agentic AI. And I'm going to talk about some of the pitfalls for actually leveraging agentic AI in production. You've been hearing a lot of buzzwords, but you'll see some actual practical application. The initial technical support we just did is so that we can actually do a demo, which I think puts us in a small category of companies that are trying to show you something live, so we're doing that now. So a little bit about my background. My first startup was a media startup in the 2010s. It was what's called a supply-side platform at another time when there was a lot of kind of generational change in the marketplace, specifically around media. And scaled that up and sold it to now the largest media company in the world by audience, Meredith ... And then after that, I had a foundry where I built a lot of minimum viable products for startups. And these are the kinds of startups you see, many of them today at smaller booths that have implemented MVPs. And one of those MVPs is now the largest payment provider in the US. After that, I worked in the US government running something called the AI Center of Excellence for the US General Services Administration. And that's where I met my co-founder, Sean, who worked on the Gemini One Box, which in many ways you can think of it, the Google One Box. It's the first version of the way that Google shows search results now, where you have content above the search results. It's kind of they were pushed to actually roll that out across their products by Perplexity, but he worked on that. And before that, he was the first designer hired by the founders of Airbnb that was not a founder. So we came together working on some US government projects during COVID, and we saw an opportunity to leverage best-in-class product thinking and design around deploying models for real-world use cases. So we want to get on the same page with a few things before I show you some real-world use cases. So what do we mean by agent? So agent, this is an AI software system that acts on your behalf. Agentic layer, this is the orchestration framework around the agents, and that allows you to actually embody real-world workflows and run them. And then the eval framework is how you measure business value and ensure your agents are delivering for your use case.
The agent.
So this is a really important slide. We're going to step back again and talk about a stat that I'm sure you've seen a few times today and definitely over the last couple months. The number one stat right in the middle, 95% of AI pilots fail to deliver business value in some way. This is from MIT. 80% of internal projects fail. This is from the US think tank RAND Corporation. And then 1% of companies have failed to implement their AI strategy. That's actually good given those two other stats. So why are we here in this beautiful room if those things are true, right? What do we do with that? What does that mean? Well, I think that the key takeaway here is that this is not much different than standard software development in large corporations, in the Fortune 1000. It's very hard to develop new features. The product expertise isn't there. If you did this same analysis of developing new features and if they actually delivered on the perceived business value that was in the business case that was presented to whoever owned the P&L before you deployed the use case, it would look very similar. AI just makes it a little bit worse because now there's the promise of these models that are so capable, right, that are kind of these magic boxes that we can all see deliver so much value. Well, why doesn't that work for business? And it's because you don't have the internal, typically in the Fortune 1000, you don't have internal product owners who are really experienced with AI, and you definitely don't have kind of best-in-class AI engineers that you can apply to these problem spaces. And what that all leads to, and this is the critical point, is slow implementation. And that, I think, is the key to why AI projects fail internally. If you have slow implementation, it means that you are waiting maybe until the end of the time that you have allotted to complete your project in the P&L to actually get the product into the hands of users, which is the core thing you have to do for product development. So I didn't talk about this at the outset of the presentation, but Sean and I, the company, went through Y Combinator. This is a U.S. startup incubator. It's a very storied incubator. It's an intense process in California with a bunch of other engineers trying to hit your metrics every week. But the key thing there, the number one Y Combinator catchphrase is make something people love. And you don't know if you made something people love until you get it into the hands of the user. So this is the number one reason projects fail. And in enterprise, it's just very hard to get that initial pilot to the point where you're getting the user feedback and you can iterate. So that's what we've built Capital to deliver on. Our recipe for success is not a secret. It's on this slide. Small teams, defined use cases, which means you have to have that internal product expertise, agents plus evals, and that's our orchestration framework, and there are others, equals impact, and you rinse and repeat. And you do this on a very tight time scale. So other features of our platform, and we'll see it, but this is what's critical in any kind of platform that you're thinking about, is being that kind of Switzerland layer that you have to implement either by building it internally or licensing it from someone else on top of frontier models, is data sovereignty. So you have to control your own data. You shouldn't, just do an exclusive deal with someone like Databricks, although they're a fine partner as part of your stack. Model flexibility. You want to be able to leverage the most, the model that is the model du jour, or the model that is best at a given use case. As we all saw, Gemini just surpassed, when it comes to the frontier reasoning capability of models, they just surpassed OpenAI, and that we're going to continue to see this. This is the cycle of innovation in large language model production. There is no horse that will stay out in front. And then compliance. From the beginning, it's very hard to build in compliance and to build in to build in things like encryption at rest and bring your own key encryption after a platform is already built. You have to kind of start with those principles if they're important for your use case. And finally, data integration. You can leverage models to do a lot of what people used to do with things like Alteryx or more manual processes for data integration right out of the gate. So here's a real world example, and you'll see this live because I took the time to plug in the computer. Goalie, Politico's CEO. Politico is kind of the leading policy intelligence platform that's part of Axel Springer's portfolio of media companies, says that Capital sped up their rollout of their Agentic framework by at least 2 years. So the CTO would probably say maybe more like a year, but we'll take the 2 years. So we're a model provider. We're not just tools. We're the orchestration layer plus that forward deployed engineering product expertise that companies need to be able to achieve these kinds of outcomes. So a quick overview of a couple of examples of customers that we've worked with, and we're going to make this connect to finance in a minute. So Politico, the average account value for a Politico user is about $10,000. Dow Jones, the average account value is about $500 to $750 a month. And Advanced Media, it's a much lower account value. It's an advertising-supported business. And with a flexible framework, you can actually develop applications that meet the business requirements of these very different use cases. One where, on the far left, on the Politico side, you can afford to pay for these high-parameter reasoning models. On the far right, you might want to use a Mistral fine-tune because it needs to be very fast because it's advertising supported, it has to load quickly, and it can't be expensive. So with a framework that lets you actually mix and match your embedding model, your orchestration model, your orchestration components, the tools that are available to the model, you can really dial in the workflow and the agentic workflow for the business use case. A few of the customers we're working with now, a couple of these are about to be announced. But extremely relevant, I think, to this room is that we're starting to work with Big Four consulting firms or consulting firms, and that kind of validates I think that the whole idea that you have to be compliance first if you're going to be able to quickly achieve application fit with users in these highly regulated environments like financial services. So one more slide before we get into, or two or three more slides before we get into demos. This is a quick example of why you might want an orchestration framework. So on the right, we have an example report as opposed to just working with a frontier model key directly. In this report, we're leveraging different models for different components of the report. We have a table summary that we're using Gemini 2.5 for. Claude 4 is creating prompts for the Flux image creation model so that it can actually make a nice image. Mixtral, an older Mixtral model, is pulling out metrics from a data set and surfacing them as kind of mini data visualizations. GPT-5 is creating a data visualization, and then Llama 4 Scout is actually adding the citations. And this chart, I think, is really important when you start to think about horizontally scaling out a use case. So again, it's great to use a high parameter, extremely expensive model like GPT-5 or one of the other reasoning models from Google, Gemini 3, for example. Fantastic. But when it comes time to scale that out across thousands of internal users, or maybe hundreds of thousands or millions of external customers, if it's a use case that has that kind of scale, you're going to want to start optimizing for cost. And that's where you really need this layer between you and the orchestration, or between you and the frontier model providers, so that you can optimize for things like latency, efficiency, and cost. And always those lower parameter models will just be cheaper, even though they might not be the best at everything. So a few things that I'm going to show you now. Our platform has three primary components: a portal, composer, and an app builder. And this is what is undergirding the application that you're about to see. So there are other examples of these frameworks. OpenAI Agentic is one. LangChain is the most popular open source framework. We're model agnostic, so that's how we're different than OpenAI Agentic. But we're different than LangChain and other open source frameworks in a really key way. So the tools on the right, those are just examples of tools. We're like every other agent framework in that we're leveraging two primary characteristics of LLMs. First, that they can reason, and second, that they can decide what tool to call. They can use tools if you give them tools. And so the reasoning capability for us is model agnostic. You can use any model for that core reasoning function as long as it makes it through our offline evaluation framework. But on the tool calling side, the way we're differentiated is almost all of the tools in Capital are implemented in serverless functions, which means when you prototype an application, and you'll see what those look like in a second, and you press play, now they can scale to thousands of users without you having to rewrite your application, which is what you'll have to do if you leverage an open source framework like LangChain. And that's fine, but it goes back to those charts at the beginning of the presentation. It just leads you to being in a situation where you're waiting to get that user feedback, which is going to make you much less likely to be successful. So the kinds of things people make in Capital are these kinds of artifacts. So things like policy reports, slide decks, news, email, agentic search insights, data exports. And with that, instead of showing you more slides from the framework, I'll just go ahead and do a demo. Okay, so this is our framework. We have a few different, let me go back. Sorry, one second. I just have to plug one more thing in. So the internet in the Grand Palais is not quite up to the task. So this that you're looking at right now is Politico. This is one of our customers. Oh, you can't see it? All right, let's try. There it is. All right. So let's hope for the internet here. So this is Politico. This is what you get if you pay Politico $10,000 a year for a seat. And what you get inside Politico is this AI report creator that leverages Politico's data to do deep research reports on top of their document corpora, but also includes key evals that are critical for Politico's business. So things like political bias, depth of analysis, citation relevance, and that's all stuff that they implemented in our platform. So going back to this platform screen, hopefully refreshing, I'll be able to see the formats. Users can configure these web content generation agents, and they show up here in a second. So these are configurations of web content generation agents. You can pick your orchestrating model, you can provide additional context, you can specify where the data comes from, you can enable different kinds of content outputs, and you can critically apply different evaluations to the outputs. So we have lots of different evaluations that can be applied to those outputs, either online or offline, to ensure that the content generation that ends up showing up here for a user, and here's an example of a report, we'll generate it, that the report meets the users and the business requirements. We'll hopefully load this report. Yeah. So this is a report on the impact of cyber regulations on the crypto industry, only leveraging Politico data. As you can see, there are these citations that are coming from Politico. Every block has a citation. This is something that's configured in that view you just saw before, where I can pick the different evals that are applied and pick where the data comes from. And now I can share this with people on my team. I can download it as a PDF. And what this is doing is speeding up the work that someone like a lobbyist or a public affairs person at a firm that deals with crypto in this case would do manually. They would have to take these articles, paste them into ChatGPT, maybe get a result, iterate with them. And this way, they also have the benefit of having those evals, ensuring that there aren't hallucinations, ensuring that every one of the citations that is in this report is real, which is a huge problem actually with using models directly, is that often you have things like synthetic citations that are created. So this is one example of what you can do with Capital. But I'm pretty excited to show you what we're deploying now with financial services customers. So this is, again, our platform. You can do lots of things I won't show you, like manage data collections and add guardrails and implement evals and so many things. But what I think is critical to show you is that what you can also do is you can model human workflows with an agentic UX. And that's what you're looking at right here. So this is an example of a deep research report workflow. So we have an agent that is the primary agent. It has a pretty simple system prompt. I can click and see it. It's supposed to create a deep research report. It has an input prompt here that's saying, create a deep research report about rare earth mining in Europe and in China. And then I'm passing that to the output of that to an evaluation, where we're going to evaluate it for two different things, logical flow and consistency. And if it fails, it'll keep iterating until it passes the eval. And then the output of the first agent is being passed to another agent that's going to create an audio extract and then give us a quick audio summary of the report. So I'm going to run this. It takes a little bit of time to run because it's a real deep research report, but you can see what it looks like to run the workflow. So this is what an operator does, someone who's been trained to create this kind of a repeatable workflow. But if I want to expose this for other people in my organization, this is really where the power of the platform comes in. I can click these fields. So let's say I want to make anyone in my org be able to create this kind of a deep research report using these models, and I'm using Claude Opus in this case. It's a very powerful model. And just to provide a different prompt about what the deep research report should be about, and to pick a voice for the deep research report. If I click these two plugs, so one for the text input and one for the voice, and then click publish, this allows me to publish the tool as an MCP tool that I can use from other orchestrating agents like Claude or GPT-5. Or I can publish it as an API, and now my developers can vibe code an interface on top that lets anyone in my org quickly spin up these kinds of reports. So this is a trivial example, obviously deep research, something that is in many platforms. But to show you what's really possible here in the context of something like FinServe, this is a, let's go here. This is a integrations report. So this is a simple agent for creating a report on the potential benefit of the integration of two companies. In this case, the system prompt is very involved. So this really congeals kind of the expertise of a financial analyst that knows quite a lot about how to create the kind of report that emphasizes what happens when two companies are merged, in this case, Keurig and Dr. Pepper. And then we have a secondary subsidiary agent that's going to, and this models exactly the process in a firm that does this kind of work, is going to take that first report and then look for potential synergies and create another report about that. So this workflow creates two high-value artifacts. The first is a integrations report that talks about the potential benefits, and that's almost like a commercial due diligence report. And the second is really just focused on synergies. And what this looks like, and this takes a long time to run. So let me shrink it. So I'm not going to run it in the course of the next 45 seconds that I have, but you get an output that looks like this, all from that workflow. And the amount of time that we're saving with this kind of a generation process is something like, you can get to what we call an 80% artifact. So this is maybe 80% of what your staff would produce themselves in maybe 10 minutes. And that is something that someone would have taken, a week or a week and a half to produce. And I can iterate with it here in the chat. So I can say things like, turn this into a set of bar charts, et cetera. So thank you for your time. Happy to talk to you after the session. And thanks for bearing with me during the technical difficulties.